In this last video, we're going to look at the review and the trial of a tool. So cast your mind back to when we talked about the trial review process at the beginning of these videos. And you will notice that this is a time when we look at what we've developed so far, and I suppose in many ways run it by somebody who can give us some valuable insight and constructive feedback about things we may have missed or improvements we can make. Part of getting to the trial and review process is to create a competency matrix. I suppose this is the last part in the development of an assessment tool. A competency map, or matrix as it's often called, is where we're gathering all our methods in one place, referencing all those elements, performance criteria, and then also through to the performance evidence and knowledge evidence. So for example, select appropriate technology and software applications to achieve the requirements of the task. This is suggesting that as observation tool 1 and the project, the first part of the observation tool and the second part of the project actually cover this aspect. Let's have a look if this is the case. So looking at our observation checklist, we can see that this part of selecting the right technology with the right application, making sure the workstation is efficient to do the work safely. By doing these things, we are actually covering off that part of the performance criteria. Equally, we're doing that for all of these components, all of this performance criteria. And as we go further down, we are also seeing that it makes an appearance in the performance evidence. The foundation skills, just as a side issue, we simply copy and paste them virtually from training.gov.au. At this point, we're able to simply recognize that these performance criteria, if assessed, will actually support the reading aspects that are required as part of the foundation skills for this unit. So apart from the foundation skills, which we almost can just copy across, all of the other assessment methods that are used are going to be mapped specifically so we can see exactly what we actually are doing with those tools. Going to another example, let's have a look at the project. So this is the project, and remember we said that item 1, photos of your workstation, that it's set up in a safe manner. Have someone take the photo with you in it. That there should capture performance criteria 1.2, 1.3, so that would be the criteria covered by that particular component. So we virtually do the same process throughout. Now, two things happen. As you complete this, you can start to see if there are any significant gaps, and you can address them in the first instance by revisiting your tool and including some extra assessment. Or the other part of that is that you can ensure that you have at least 2 forms of evidence for every one of those, and then make a judgment when you get down to your performance evidence and your knowledge evidence about what is covering the requirements for evidence. Always remember that by having 2, we're covering sufficiency, which is one of the rules of evidence. So the aim of it is then to map this through, and exactly after that what we can do is simply go and do what we call a trial of our tool. What exactly is the trial of a tool? Now, the trial of a tool simply is to ensure you're getting some level of feedback from either industry stakeholders, a colleague, some students in a training environment, someone who can give you feedback about the various dimensions about how adequate and easy to follow the tools you have created are. And all of those people that I mentioned will simply be able to do that. Often enough, the trial is framed into what we call a validation process, and we use that as part of the approach to gathering information which is benchmarked against the criteria. So a typical validation checklist. So you can use a checklist similar where you look at who's involved, the name of the validators, the materials being used, the unit that's being looked at, and then you work through these in a systematic and objective way in terms of answering yes or no and supporting your conclusions with comments. So you would typically use a document similar as you work through this progressively, because you don't want the trial to be, is this tool good, yes or no? Do you like this tool, yes or no? You want more than that. You want to look at evidence benchmarks. You want to look at the validity, the fairness, the flexibility and the reliability, which is part of the principles. You want to look at the rules of evidence. And as you sit down with a person or a group of people, gather that evidence or the feedback they give you so that you can comment on it, and hopefully all of that will lead to an assessment tool that is effective, an assessment tool that is more precise, an effective tool that can be used for students widely. So that validation process can typically form part of the trial. A trial can also be emailing the tool to someone and saying, can you give me feedback? Of course it can. But to ensure we get quality, to ensure we get down to specifics, often a validation process like this is used. So in summary, when we look at an assessment tool, we're looking at something that has a way of gathering a focus of the tool through research, and from there determining what products and processes we're going to engage in, look at the options for collecting evidence, the methods we might employ, and then how we develop those into a tool that can be used, and then how we might trial and review that tool so that we can get a more effective tool that can train students in a much more effective way so that their experience is one in the assessment process of ease and practicality. So that's how assessment tools are effectively put together.